Yeah. The other most memorable moment of my high school career, some of you will remember, some of the old timers will remember this, but we were ranked second in the state. We'd gone 17-0 to start my senior season. I was the captain, and I was a guard, 6'6" guard, kind of unheard of back then. But we were very good. We won the Thanksgiving tournament, the Edwardsville tournament down near St. Louis, and we were 17-0 at one point, ranked second in the state behind that Thornridge team. That was my senior year that I wrote about. But I wrote about the team that we didn't get a chance to play because we got upset in our own regional. But the most memorable moment of my senior high school days was we went to Pinckneyville to play. And we got a lot of votes for second in the state. Thornridge got all the first place votes. They were the defending state champs. Nobody came close to beating them all year. But we were ranked second in the state, and Duncan Reid told the team, I want us to play our best game in Pinckneyville because there's going to be a lot of Southern riders down there, and I want them to all see us and know how good we are, and I want them to all vote for us. And maybe we can get a first place vote, but at least maybe we can get every second place vote. But we went to Pinckneyville, we played our worst game ever, I think. And the perfect example of how bad it was just before halftime in a close game, I stole a cross-court pass mid-court and went in for an uncontested layup and blew it as the buzzer sounded. Now we go into the locker room and the 5 starters sit down on a bench in tight quarters, and Duncan Reid starts with the first guy. Swingle. You can't hit the side of a barn with your shots. You know, you're terrible tonight. Da-da-da. Mike Snyder, the point guard. Mike Snyder, 6 turnovers in the first quarter, or whatever. Yeah, I mean, he went down. Each one of us got blistered by the coach. Tim Bushell was next. And you need to get on the boards, Tim. And then it was Norman Cook sitting right next to me. And Norman was an all-state candidate that year. He was first team all-state, I think, both junior and senior years. Well, Duncan says to him, all state, my ass, you're not even all Pinckneyville. And I was sitting next to Norman, and I'm almost starting to laugh, but I start to look up, and I feel, BAM! On the top of my head. He broke the clipboard over the top of my head. And you, an effing senior, how can you be so bad? So anyway, the word got out. That was on a Friday night. The word got out around Lincoln that this had happened, and I was told I should come into the WPRC studios for the coaches show the next morning so that we could say it didn't hurt, it was no big deal, because I think, Duncan was a little afraid he was going to be in big trouble for that. But the only other thing I remember is as this happened. It didn't hurt at all. It was just a shock. But I looked up at Norman, who was right next to me. His eyes were about this big, and because the clipboard clattered all around the locker room. Anyway, but yeah, my first job was in Decatur, and then I went to St. Pete and worked there, and then I spent most of my career out in Portland, Oregon. And I did have a sports talk show before there were 1 million sports talk shows nationwide. So I was able to, with a nice Rolodex, I was able to call and get a hold of almost all of my childhood heroes and was able to talk with them. Bob Gibson and Lou Brock and Cub fans, Ron Santo and Billy Williams. And I mean, it was just such a great thrill to be able to do that. Then my biggest thrill, I did get to call games on Fox Northwest and all those other networks that were talked about. I'm very thankful for that because that's what I really wanted to do. And I was able to realize that dream. And it was so much fun to call games because you just never knew what was going to happen. But my biggest thrill came after I was laid off from my full-time job at age 59 and a half. 2 months later, I got a call from Oregon State University, and they needed somebody to call their men's basketball game at Maryland that coming up in a couple weeks, because their main play-by-play guy was calling a football game down in California. So they asked me if I would fill in on the road. Now, it was at Maryland, and the Oregon State's coach was Craig Robinson, who was Michelle Obama's brother. And so when I agreed to do that, I didn't realize that I was going to get to go into the White House and go into the Oval Office and shake hands with Barack and Michelle Obama. The girls were sitting on the couch right there in the Oval Office. And, you know, kind of, no matter what your politics are, it's pretty impressive when you walk into the Oval Office and see all that famous stuff. And the next night was the game. The first family came to the game. And I was courtside. The big press row table here. My engineer was right here, and then it was me, my broadcast position. Barack Obama was right behind me the whole game. Now, and the whole family. But right before the first family came in, just before tip-off, the head of the Secret Service kneels down between the engineer and myself, and he says, look, there's some rules. I'm going to tell everybody on the press table this story, but some rules here. The first family will be arriving shortly. Under no circumstances should you stand up. And certainly do not raise your hand to try to shake hands. That could be deemed an aggressive act, and we have snipers in the building. Okay. Now, fast forward to the end of the game. Oregon State is having a terrible season, and somehow they are so inspired that the president's there watching, they upset Maryland, who almost never loses at home. So as the final buzzer sounds, I am on the radio just ecstatic and screaming, Oregon State has knocked off Maryland. And I see out of the corner of my eye, the president is the first family is starting to leave. And the president is shaking hands with my engineer, who's just to my left. And Barack Obama looks at me, our eyes meet, and he's smiling, and I had shaken his hand the day before and introduced to him and all that. And I thought he looked like he wanted to shake my hand, so I kind of got out of my seat and started shaking, and I thought, then I remembered what the Secret Service guy said. I looked to see if I had a red dot on my shirt, and I had a laser pointed at me, But I just stood there for like 2 seconds, and I thought, don't leave me hanging. And he came around the front of the table and shook my hand. So he didn't leave me hanging. And I was able to say on the air, just came out, I said, well, and folks, not only did the Beavers upset Maryland, but I just shook hands with the President of the United States for the second time in 24 hours. So that was a pretty cool deal. Now that in itself would have been the highlight of my broadcasting career probably, but I got a call while I was on that trip from the Portland Trail Blazers. Their play-by-play guy was sick, and they asked me if I could fill in on their road trip. Could I come fill in on the So I took a red eye after that game, flew up to New York, and called the Blazers Brooklyn Nets game the next night. And then after that game, you immediately get on the team plane, and we flew to Milwaukee, and I called the game against the Bucks with Giannis and everybody 2 nights later. So here, the highlight of my career came 2 months after I'd been laid off my job. So that was a pretty cool thing. Let me check one thing. I wanted to cut a couple things here.